Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking our second look at the Steam Deck using EmuDeck, and we're going to be having a look at some more PlayStation 1, PlayStation original games. And these are going to be running through Duckstation, which I think is probably the best of the PlayStation 1 emulators on the Steam Deck. And this first one we're looking at is a game I never actually played at the time, which was 007 Racing, James Bond. Don't know why I've never actually played this one before, because it looked pretty good. Really nice intro there. Obviously they're able to use the James Bond music. And basically, it's a bit like, you play Bond, but you're in this first level. You're on you're in the classic Aston Martin car, and your gun is basically you can fire rockets. So that's your means of attack. It took a little bit of getting used to, I have to say. This one, it took a little bit of time, but come the end, I was fairly au fait with it. But it's alright, you know, it is what it is, I suppose. I said, not one I'd ever tried. I don't think it's a classic by any means. It's not GoldenEye, but it is a bit more Bond. If you want to look at a little bit of Bond. Now this was the re-release, like an updated version of the classic arcade game Asteroids. And this is... I do remember playing this one before, and this is actually really, really good. So, outside of the arcade, the original arcade one was obviously like a vector graphic game, and when it got released on the Atari 2600, it was much more accomplished, and it was actual graphics rather than vector graphics. And this is basically the next iteration on from that. So, you've got much more detailed backgrounds, and the game is quite fast and furious. Great sound on it as well. I really enjoyed playing this. And quite a few of the games we'll see today, although I only show like a minute or so of footage, I actually ended up playing them for quite a bit longer than that, because I was just enjoying them so much. And that's usually a good sign. The big thing about retro gaming on the Steam Deck is the pickup and playability of it. So there's no massive time investment getting through hundreds of levels and saving your progress and the rest of it. This is very much, pick up, have your blast, move on to the next one. And that's sort of what I love about retro gaming, really. There's no massively long commitment unless you really want it to be. Always have loved Bobble. One of my all-time favourite arcade games. In fact, I wouldn't mind getting an original cabinet with that one in all honesty. I did complete it back in the day, because you can have two people playing the game simultaneously, and I did finish it back in the day in the arcade. Remember that quite well, but I don't think I ever completed it on the home version. Maybe back in sort of the 90s, possibly. But it does get quite fast and furious come the end. Now, as you know, I like my fighters, and this is the Capcom Vs SNK Pro, and I really like, with these, the cartoony style graphics. I think it really suits these beat-em-ups or fighting games, and I just think they look better than the ones that are trying to go for actual realism, looking like, actual people. I know there's not many that do that, but there are some. They try and the graphics just seem a little bit too advanced for what they're trying for. Whereas with this one, it doesn't make any bones about it. It looks like it's from a comic strip, and that works so much better. And they certainly got the hang of the controls, and that's why this game went on to, and the Marvel one went on to have a lot of sequels, and we will have a look at the Marvel one a little bit later. But I think you sort of forget just how many amazing games came out for the PlayStation 1. And just incredible, really. What a system that was. It was a game changer in its day. It was so popular. I remember playing mine to death. I mean, all the time, you know, just great. This is Driver 2. Once again, one I did play back in the game, although I don't think I owned it. I think I possibly borrowed it from a friend. Which was all the rage back then. You'd swap a game with someone for 2-3 weeks till you finished it. And already, even in the days of the PlayStation 1, there was a thriving second-hand market for games. But this one, I mean, you sort of get an idea of the hardware capabilities of the PlayStation 1 when you look at a game like this, because it's open world, it's trying to draw a massive city in the distance, and it's really difficult, with the power that's under the hood there. I think it does an admirable job. Perhaps there are a few games that do it a little bit better, but when you think how big the Driver games were, I don't think this is a bad effort at all, in all honesty. Obviously, you've got to try and shake the police if you can. They're on your tail. This is great. I've always enjoyed this one, Einhander. Never owned it at the time. I've only ever played it on various retro systems over the years, and I gotta say, on the Steam Deck, it plays fantastic. It really does. I just love it. Sideways shooter. It does sort of go semi-sideways, like on an angle, as we'll see in a little minute. And there's a few PlayStation 1 games that to sort of be like semi-3D. This is sort of how they did it, and you'll see an example of this in a minute. And there's another game later on which does exactly the same. Heavily influenced by Blade Runner, as you can see, with the big adverts on the side of the walls there. But you see it's sort of turned at an angle. But basically it's still a sideways scroller. It's great though. Really good game. It's very playable right from the off, and it's not ridiculously difficult, which I think some of these can be. Certainly some of the Japanese ones are very hard. Now, this was a slight disappointment. So this is Hot Shots Golf 2, or in the UK or Europe, it was Everybody's Golf 2. Now, I'm a big fan of this series, and I have to say, this one was a bit of a disappointment, but only because, on hindsight, this was still only the second ever sort of Hot Shots golf game that had been produced, so it was still a little bit clunky. It was an improvement over the first one, and you can see some of the things that would come into the game a little bit later on. But for me, still, the best Hot Shots golf game, or Everybody's Golf game, it's not the one for the PlayStation 3, although that visually looks the best. It's for playability, it's the one that came out on the PlayStation Portable, the PSP, and that's the one I would urge you to go. So play Everybody's Golf 2 on the PSP. You will not be disappointed. That is one incredible game, and the addiction level is just something else. Now, if you've been watching any of my Steam Deck videos in the past, you will know that I'm a big fan of retro games. And although I don't go crazy on retro games this time round, there's no retro compilations for a change. I did, like Asteroids earlier on, I did include a couple of games that have been updated from their original retro incarnations to a more modern version. And this was one such one, which is Frogger. So loved Frogger back in the day in the arcade. I loved it. This is hard. It's harder than it looks, believe me. And because of that, in a way, I was a little bit disappointed. I thought this got very hard very quickly. It just didn't seem quite as enjoyable as the original the original Frogger, so I didn't dwell on that one. This, however, was fantastic. This is the first Gex game. Very, very, very good, this. The controls are really responsive, although, you know, you're playing the little lizard guy there, and he moves in, you know, slightly weird ways, and his attack is basically swiping his tail. It's still very, very intuitive when you actually control the character. And this is a game I've not picked up in many, many years. I couldn't tell you the last time I played it. I mean, we're probably talking 20 years ago, and boy oh boy, it came flooding back, and I thought, this is really, really playable. So, out of all the games we played today, this is definitely one that I would recommend you go back and test yourself, because it's a good one. There are definitely a few more in here to come, which I think you'll enjoy, but this one you want to give a bit of time to, because it's great. This is Gran Turismo 2. Now, I'm a big fan of the Gran Turismo games. I did have this one back in the day. I can't remember a lot about it. I had Gran Turismo 1 and 2, and the thing I always remember about them was that it was almost like driving in real life, in that you couldn't just go crazy. And with that in mind, I did try, because we were in a little group of like six cars there on the grid, I did try, and once I got familiar with the controls, I did try to pass them, but just as I was about to, I failed miserably and ended up facing in the wrong direction. But I did persevere, and come the end of the second lap, I think I ended up about third. So, although I won't bore you with the whole journey, but this is me spinning off the track, sadly. But it is a great racing game, and like the first one, it comes recommended. I mean, it really is good stuff, this. Now, this is a fantastic puzzler called Kula World, and I have a funny feeling, I had this one back in the day, it's quite a collectible game now, and I have a funny feeling that this is only released in the UK, possibly a PAL version. And basically you play this big beach ball, and you have to guide it around the track, pick up the coins, pick up a key, and then you can exit the level. Now you can jump over short distances to get to other bits of the playing field. But it rapidly gets complicated because it goes 3D, and you start going in all dimensions. It's a real head scratcher, but in effect it's a puzzler, and I think it's a class puzzler that you want to try, because it's a good game, this one. And there's a reason that it's quite collectible these days. It's because it's a good game that isn't generally available. As I said, I think it was a UK exclusive. I recommend this to at least give a try to. Kula World, it's good stuff. Another one of those brilliant Capcom beat-em-ups, Marvel superheroes. Once again, this is just a delight to play. I mean, it's fantastic. Superb graphics, the cartoony style there. It looks from the period, if you know what I mean. The style of artwork looks a bit like Batman the animated, Spider-Man the animated series. But it was around the time of the Batman one, of course, in the early 90s. This is a little bit later than that, but it's a good one. It's a real good game, this, and it just plays so well, and that's the hallmark of these Capcom games. Although, I'll give the game away here, Captain America beats me on this first round. I beat him on the second round, because I realised that all I needed to do was, when he chucks his shield, is to just jump out the way. The shield is then behind him, and then he's vulnerable. So that was my little tip to beating Captain America. Maybe I should have shown round 2 rather than round 1. But you get the idea. This is Need for Speed 3. Now we're all familiar with the Need for Speed series. And this wasn't bad, but it was... I found the track a little bit boring. Maybe I should have chosen a different one rather than this sort of rural one, but in the end, yeah, I mean, you know, you can see the speed. The background stays pretty steady. Obviously, the Steam Deck doesn't have any issue emulating any of these, so it plays nice and smoothly. But the actual game itself, well, it is only emulating an old PlayStation 1 game, so it's not going to be all singing and dancing. But that being said, as you can see, it runs really, really well. It's just the actual level that I chose wasn't perhaps the best one, but still good. And I know the Steam Deck now is very easily available. There's no waiting list anymore. They've got through all of that, which is great news. Now this is one of those 2D platformers which attempts to be a 3D one by just changing your perspective as you work your way around the levels. And I actually finished this one and the sequel, Pandemonium 2, right to the very end. They're not particularly difficult, and you get sort of unlimited goes, unlimited lives, so you never really run out. I mean, you just play it as long as you want. And there are level skips that you can put in. You can find them online, so you can just jump to the last levels. I recommend the final level of this. It is absolutely mind-boggling. It's quite psychedelic. You sort of play as like a couple of jesters, and that's why you got the colourful outfits. It's a really, really great game, this, and one of the best, I think, PlayStation 1 platformers that you can get. And as you can see, considering it is really just 2D, they do make a very clever attempt at making it like a 3D version of a game, and they should be commended for that. It was made by the people who did the Tomb Raider series and published by Eidos. This one's a bit of fun. This was developed in Europe, where Pink Panther is very, very popular, particularly France and Belgium. And this is just, well, it's a little 3D platformer, as you can see here, a 2D platformer rather, featuring the Pink Panther. And this first level, you're actually in a ship, in actual fact. And this is like the bowels of the ship. And you have to go work your way around the ship finding keys. You need like 10 keys to get through to the next sort of bit of the level. It's all right. It's not bad. It's really nice graphics, as you can see. The sound isn't up to much, but they do use all the classic characters from the brilliant animated TV series. The little short cartoons, which I love. So if you're a fan of those, you'll definitely love the Pink Panther game here, because it's great stuff, as you can see. Now, I'm a sucker for pinball, and this one is Timeshock, and it's not bad. It's not as accomplished as some of the later ones, which sort of where the ball sort of is a bit more up close, so you can see exactly what's going on. But sometimes it's quite nice playing a pinball table like this if you're playing video pinball. Still not a patch on the ultimate two pinball compilations in my eyes, which is the pinball, the Williams pinball collection, which is fantastic. They came out on the PSP again. They did come out on a couple other systems, but really, really great handheld on the PSP. They're recommended, and the Gottlieb collection rather. So Williams and the Gottlieb collection, very, very good. This one's not bad though. This isn't bad at all, because there are not that many on the PlayStation 1. This was fantastic. Look at those graphics. For PS1, this is really, really something. I'd forgotten how amazing this looked. I mean, look at this, just incredible. This is the very first Rayman game, and you can see why there was a couple of sequels. I remember this winning a lot of awards. It was in all the magazines at the time, and it still plays really well. As you can see, it's just fantastic. This original Rayman game is good stuff. I just couldn't remember the graphics looking that good. Maybe they didn't look that good on a big TV, but on this screen for the Steam Deck, they're perfect. Absolutely perfect. And thankfully when you die you don't have to go back to the start of the level, you can just go to the next bit. This is the first ever Tekken game. I'm a big fan of these, but it was always Tekken 3 which really sticks in my mind as being a just terrific fighting game. But this is the very first one, and this is one where, although the gameplay is fine, it's quite satisfying when you're having your fights. As you can see, the actual sort of models are struggling a little bit. It doesn't look as good as the later games. There's no sort of story behind it. There's no great cutscenes like the later games would have. It's good, but I wouldn't waste your time. I'd just go straight into Tekken 3 if you are going to play one on the PlayStation 1. That was what I would recommend. But if you're an absolute fanatic, this is still good, don't get me wrong, but 3 is much better. But you know what you're going to get with a Tekken game, and this was quite a close little match here actually. Now this is the final sort of arcadey one that got re-released on this video, which is Xevious 3D/G+. I don't know where the G+ comes in, but basically you've got 3 versions of Xevious on here. The original arcade, like Super Xevious, which came a few years later in the arcade, and then you've got this one, which is like the 3D Xevious. So same principle, one button shoots, the other button does bombs. You're working your way up the coast here. You've got all the different levels from the original Xevious, but it's vastly improved graphics. Still very difficult. It's super hard. So it is what it is. But it's a good game, and I always loved the original Xevious a lot. So it's quite nice to play this. It's one I'd never ever played. One of the retro games that had come back that I'd never given a go before, and it was good. Pretty good this. Then for the final game for the second PlayStation Steam Deck compilation, we got the very original Wipeout. Boy oh boy, this is just a delight. Super quick to play, great sound, the visuals are just terrific. It is a bona fide PlayStation 1 classic, and just look at that. It runs silky smooth, it's just beautiful to look at, and it's got to be one that you give a try to, because it's just so good, as you can see. So there you go. I hope you have enjoyed this first Steam Deck video in about 3 weeks. So sorry for the delay, but had a lot on. You know how it is, but it hasn't stopped me playing my Steam Deck when I get a chance, and I will try and do these every other week if I can, looking at different emulators. I'm still in 2 minds about doing a Switch emulator. It looks like I can probably get away with it now, so maybe the time is right to actually do one of them. So maybe I'll do that next time. But thank you very much for watching today, and do please subscribe if you've not already for regular vintage Steam Deck content. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.